Hi, my name is Phil Akalp. Thanks to all the people at Affiliate Summit here too. I hope you guys are having as good a time as I am as well. I'm the founder of corpnet.com, and we form corporations and LLCs. My wife and I started actually in 1997, and real briefly, we started this business through affiliate marketing. We did all this great stuff, and we had formed over 110,000 corporations and LLCs. That business was acquired in 2005 by Intuit. We took a few years off, and we're back in it again. So I'm hoping I can share some information with you guys about how important it is to incorporate or form an LLC, even if you're a small business. If you're looking for topics about hiding assets, hiding your personal information, things like that, this isn't that type of a discussion. This is more about running a legitimate business, how you can legitimately protect your assets, and how you can do it affordably. So let's start off with a general discussion. First off, there's these different business structures. Does everyone here have a business? Raise your hand if you have a business. How about that? Let me see that. Well, that's everyone in the room. I'm happy to see that. Okay. Is anybody incorporated? How about that? Look at that. Okay. Any LLCs? And I'm guessing the rest of you are sole proprietors. Okay. Any reason, right there, the sole proprietor lady who raised her hand, any reason you have not incorporated? I'm curious.
Just haven't got around to it.
Just haven't got around to it. Okay. All right. And what do you do?
I'm an affiliate.
Affiliate marketer. Excellent. Okay. So as an overview of this particular discussion, first we're going to cover quickly these different business structures. Then we're going to talk about business liability and, in particular, how it affects affiliates, bloggers, tweeters, endorsers on the internet. I'll cover the FTC guidelines briefly. Get familiar with that? Anybody heard of the FTC revised guidelines for endorsers? I got one hand up there. Yeah, she nods her head like, yeah, I know that by heart. Okay, so that's good. All right. And then we'll talk about how you can incorporate, basically protect your assets from any kind of liability as an endorser. And then we'll get around to where to incorporate and what type of structure should I form. All right, so getting right to it, sole proprietorship, simplest form of business. If you can't get around to incorporating, that's where we all start. Like I said, our last business formed over 100,000 corporations. For the first year, we weren't incorporated. And most people don't know that. It's a little embarrassing, but we didn't get around to it. You own 100%, you control 100% of that business. The disadvantages is your personal advantages, your personal assets are at risk. And you might be missing out on certain special tax benefits only given to corporations and LLCs. The general partnership, same thing as a sole proprietor. However, here it's where two or more individuals are operating a business. The big disadvantage of the general partnership, however, is that all partners are liable for any partner's acts. So I like this example here about one bad partner can bind all partners. I had this friend, his name was Titus. And I remember we created this site. He wanted to do this offshore gambling, back in 1997. He had this great idea. He said, Phil, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take our servers, and we're going to keep our servers offshore. This way, we don't have to pay any income taxes. And my thought was, wait a minute. If we bring that money into the States, don't we have to pay taxes on that? And his reply was, oh, no. I got a whole system of how we're going to do that. I said, well, Titus, what's your plan? I'm going to go down there. I'm going to withdraw the cash. I'm going to tape it to my body and fly back to the States. Had he done that, I could have been liable for a lot of criminal. Obviously, you see the criminal ramifications, the tax ramifications of doing that. And one partner can bind all the partners, so I strongly recommend against forming a general partnership. The C Corporation, S Corp, and the LLC. For these types of business structures, they have a separate entity. So you have an actual living, breathing entity. And each entity has its own name and its own tax ID. It's similar to like a birth certificate and a social security number. The disadvantages, more startup costs. You got to pay these state filing fees. Franchise taxes in California, for example. Anyone from California? Okay, so are you familiar with the fact that it's $800 a year?
I'm not happy about it.
Right, exactly. Then you're going to like what I talk about a little later, which is about avoiding that tax. So actually, you're not going to like that. Anyway, so so let's move on. Why incorporate or form an LLC? You might hear a lot of things about the big tax benefits, but the reality of it is the primary reason for forming one is the asset protection. The creditors can only reach the corporate assets. And the corporation is the proper party in a lawsuit. I remember we got sued this one time for $5,000, something small, and the attorney decided to serve me at home while I was at my kid's birthday party. And the process server showed up at her house, and it was embarrassing, it was frustrating. Had I, had that particular business in a corporation, he couldn't have done that. He would have had to serve the corporation. That would have been the proper party. Tax savings. There's certain employment tax savings we're going to cover a little bit. Self-employment tax savings, we'll cover a little bit of that. Fringe benefits available to C Corp, we'll cover that a little later too. We're having some technical difficulties with the videos that are coming up, so I'm going to be hopping and skipping around a little bit, but please stop me and ask any questions you might have. It's a small group, so we might as well make it interactive if you want to. Blah, 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 blah. We'll skip all that stuff. Business liability. Should I worry? I do business over the internet. I'm working out of my house. I have a small monitor. I'm not, it's not worth it for me to incorporate yet, would be my thought. Well, by itself, the liability you face just by doing business over the internet won't trigger a sales tax or an income tax liability from other states. So you're not going to owe other states income tax just from doing business over the internet. However, you may be required to defend a lawsuit in another state, and that always costs money. I've done that as well too. Anytime you have to hire a local law firm and then hire another law firm outside of the state, it gets very expensive. Product liability for affiliates. Anybody sell products? No? None of you, no affiliates here sell products. One person, okay. What's that?
Yeah, as an affiliate.
As an affiliate, what kind of product is it?
Shoes, books, all kinds of things.
Okay.
All kinds of stuff.
Do you actually take custody?
No.
Excellent, excellent. If you actually take custody as an affiliate of the product, all right, you could be liable for product liability. Something happens, there's one lawsuit from maybe a class action, you could be called in on that. But if you don't take custody, chances are you probably won't be called
So
in.
your drop shipment from an online service that you're still not, those are still not actually handling, right?
But you're doing it as an affiliate earning commissions.
But I'm just saying, if another
Drop shipper, advertiser, if they grab the packaging house, manufacturer, everybody in the chain of custody for that particular product could be held liable.
as an affiliate, you're not.
Most likely you won't be held liable, however, you will still be named in the lawsuit. All right, I know myself, I was engaged in a product liability lawsuit as legal counsel, blah, blah, I won't bore you on that, but long story short, we named everybody. We must have had 150 defendants on there, and most of them would never had anything to do with it, but by the time you get out, it costs you so much money to get it dismissed. Let's see here. Federal and state tax, let's talk about exceptions to asset protection. So I said, oh, forming a corporation is a great way to protect your assets, right? But you know what, there's always an exception. I like to think of my uncle Paymon. My wife is Persian, so we have 50 cousins, about 25 different uncles. It's a big family. And I love Paymon. I remember he comes up and he goes, Phil, listen, I have an idea. $800 a year. I don't want to pay the taxes anymore. I'm going to shut Paymon Inc. down. I want to open Paymon Inc. 2. This way I don't have to pay these taxes. And he tried that. And I recommend he doesn't do it. But sure enough, it took the state 4 years to catch him, but when they did, he was responsible for all those back taxes, all those back penalties. Came to about $10,000 or $12,000, and he thought he could just shut down a corporation, avoid it, start a new one. You can't do that. That's a clear exception, and they could have come after all his personal assets if they wanted. Corporate shield's not going to protect you there. They refer to this as piercing the corporate veil. Anybody heard that phrase? Do we have some attorneys in the room? Because I'm seeing some hands go up here. I'm happy to hear that.
I'm an attorney.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, so you know what piercing the corporate veil. Have you ever seen it happen?
I'm an appellate attorney, so I've seen it through appellate work.
Okay. In my experience, I've seen a lot of people try to do it, but not once have I ever seen an actual corporate veil pierced. I've read about it a couple times, but
I've done a couple of appellate cases where the court found that the corporate veil was
But it's pretty rare. Pretty hard to do. I agree with you. And, but if it does occur, any of the directors, officers, shareholders, anyone involved in whatever this activity is, all of their personal assets could be exposed as well. So you want to avoid the piercing in the first place. So how do we not get pierced? First, it's real simple. Run a legitimate business. Don't do any dishonest or illegal acts. Inflating gross revenue. I love this example. It was probably about 10 years ago. And I remember I was walking up to our office in our old company, and I went to Pepperdine Law School. And I remember we were right by Pepperdine, our old office, and as I walked up, I saw like 5 of my old law school buddies, and they were carrying in bags filled with shredded paper. And I said, hey, what are you guys doing here? They said, oh, we're having a shredding party. Well, what's that? Apparently this particular company, what they did was Company A, all right, was selling advertising to Company B. So Company A would sell $800,000 in 1 month of advertising to Company B. And the next month, Company B would sell $800,000 of advertising back to Company A. And this happened across 20 or 30 different companies, thereby inflating the gross revenues. This was back in, what, 1999? So, you know, as everybody was trying to get IPO, everything was trying to happen. Corporate veil was pierced. A couple of the guys went to jail. Avoid that kind of stuff. It might sound like a fun, great idea, or get rich quick. Avoid that kind of stuff. Your entity must remain in good standing. It's pretty easy. Observe corporate formalities. What does that mean? That means pay your employee wages and payroll taxes appropriately, maintain your corporate filings. They're very easy. Really, there's one a year. It's not that many corporate filings. Fund your entity properly. Do you need to come up with $100,000 to start your corporation? Is $1 enough? You know, I hear that all the time. I'm going to put $100 in my bank account. The rule is fund for necessary, foreseeable expenses. If you're at home and your only expense is your internet connection, $200 in the bank account will fund it. If, however, you have an office and there's rent and so forth, you know what? Maybe you need a couple $1,000s to fund your corporation properly. Don't raid the corporate bank account. In the event creditors are coming after you and everything falls, everything just starts falling apart. All right, and the creditors are there and they're coming after the corporate assets, you don't want them coming after your personal assets. So if there's $10,000 left in the bank account, don't go grab it so that they don't. Let them take the $10,000 out of the corporate bank account. It's a lot better than losing your home, car, and all that other stuff. Don't get pierced, so don't commingle personal business assets. Get a separate tax ID, pretty basic stuff, really. Corporate bank account, open one. Don't write checks for personal expenses from your business. Don't write business expenses from your personal. And keep written records of all major business decisions. Pretty easy again. If you fire your vice president, document it. Exceptions to asset protection continue. This is not about lawsuits now, but rather about a new corporation or an LLC. You hear a lot about corporate credit and building corporate credit. Well, the reality of it is when you first form a corporation or an LLC, it doesn't have a credit rating. So what ends up happening is we formed, for example, a new corporation, we signed a lease. They don't care who CorpNet is, our company, they don't care. They want Phil Akalp to sign the documents, and that's called a personal guarantee. Your personal assets are at stake when you sign a personal guarantee. Little side note, building corporate credit. Does anybody know how to do that? Well, the slide should tell you. To build corporate credit, first thing you do is incorporate. You get the tax ID. And there are these services out there that will charge you $2,000 or $3,000 just to do this exact same thing, by the way. All right, you open a bank account. You apply for small lines of credit at places that report to credit agencies like Equifax. So for example, get an American Express, buy a Dell computer on an account for $900, Staples and Office Depot, start buying your supplies through there. Within 2 years, now you might have to at first sign it with a personal guarantee, but within 2 years, you'll start establishing corporate credit, and you'll have a corporation that's actually worth something. So we talked about how they're great for protecting assets, corporations and LLCs. What about business liability? Specifically, I'm guessing most of us are affiliates in this room. Is that correct? So we're not all merchants. Okay. Under the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC has put forward these guides as far as protecting consumers. And the last update was actually in 1980, but recently, because of all these internet and social media developments, the FTC have adopted this revised set of guidelines. And they targeted specifically social media, affiliates, and bloggers. The core issue is, in today's social media, it's becoming increasingly difficult to recognize an advertisement. Because I know a lot of bloggers, I was just, anybody over James Martell's, the Affiliate 101 class that he did, basically. He was talking about, how endorse products, basically. And endorsing these products can create a lot of liability for affiliates. In the past, when you would endorse a product, or you would make certain claims about it, you were able to have this little safe harbor provision, which basically said, results not typical. Anyone ever seen that on the end of an infomercial? Rapid weight loss, results not typical. That used to be okay. That's not okay anymore. The law on that's changed a lot. So now advertisers have to go to the lengths of disclosing the results that consumers can generally expect. So as a blogger, you don't go out and say results not typical in small print somewhere. You have to say, well, and I had a great video on this, and I apologize to you guys. We ran into some technical difficulties, so I'm going to run through it with you. Here's a little before and after shot I love. Results not typical, your actual results may vary. That is no longer acceptable. So now, and this is a bit of an exaggeration, but I kind of want to drive the point home, results that consumers can generally expect. You probably won't lose any weight. This cream won't do anything at all for your wrinkles. Male enhancement, maybe, but most likely not. Anybody remember Tom Vu? He was my hero back in the 80s. I got rich quick, but you are just wasting your time, loser. Results vary, but expect your friends to laugh out loud. And that is kind of a realistic one, because if you spray paint the top of your head, that probably is what's going to happen. But as a blogger, when you're trying to close sales, when you're worried about conversions and CPA and da-da-da-da-da, it's really hard to stay within these guidelines. The reality of it is, if you're small, nobody's going to care. But as you get bigger, as the federal government decides to start prosecuting these a little harder, all right, you could be made an example out of. All right, so we covered all that. And as I said before, the activities that are covered, writing reviews, the FTC covers that, endorsing products or services, blogging, tweeting, responses, retweets, and comments as well. So the trick to avoiding all of this liability, disclose a material relationship. If you have a material relationship with a person that you're blogging about, or the product or the service, disclose it. It's real simple. And I'm trying to reinforce this point here, disclose any material relationship with the seller. So let's look at my buddy Samir. I know this graphic doesn't really look like a Samir, but he has no job, he eats Cheetos, and he drinks Red Bull all day long. He blogs about his gaming experiences regularly. The game manufacturer then sends him this free game and says, hey, I want you to write about it. So he blogs about it favorably, and he doesn't disclose the fact that they had sent him this game for free. Well, accepting the free game created what's called a material relationship, and Samir could be subject to substantial fines under these FTC guidelines. Jesse, the MP3 promoter. There's an online message board that has all the discussions about MP3 technology, and Jesse is an employee of a company called MP3 Maker. That's a fake company, by the way. All right, and she starts posting all these messages saying, oh, this is the best MP3 player, use this one, use that one. She never talks about how she's an employee of this company. Both Jesse and her employer, all right, could be liable for an FTC enforcement action, consumer protection lawsuits, and consumer-driven lawsuits as well. So the case for incorporating. Compared to the past, it's so easy to incorporate. Our company does it for $49. I remember the first time when I started, we did it for $99. And when I told my law school teachers that, they laughed at me. And they said, how can you incorporate a business for $99? Well, now, it can be done really easy and really fast. The paperwork is minimal, all right? And the potential for defending a product liability suit is often high, especially if you're in the chain of custody. And we haven't even covered this part, but there is a high potential for defending a copyright infringement, a trademark, or a defamation suit as well, too. Once you've decided to incorporate, and I'm kind of lumping it together with LLCs, the question becomes, well, where should I incorporate? There's a lot of hype about tax-free Nevada, and here we are in Nevada. All right, Nevada and Delaware are business-friendly states, but the thing is, if you're not physically in that state, it's just not worth it. So watch out for companies that say, oh, incorporating Delaware or Nevada, there's tax-free, you're going to avoid your state income taxes. You're not. You can play all these games and do all these things, but the reality of it is, if you're trying to run a legitimate business, you want to pay your taxes. You know, I love having a huge tax bill at the end of the year. It's a great rewarding feeling to me to know that I have that. All right, and if you do incorporate in Delaware and Nevada, not only are you going to pay the Delaware, the Nevada fees and their annual fees, but you're still going to pay your home state's taxes. You can still be sued in your home state. You'll have to still pay filing fees in your home state and franchise taxes in your home state as well. So, once again, where to incorporate though? So, question becomes, okay, maybe you're within 2 states. Where do I incorporate? Take a look at where the business is physically located, where the property owned is located. When I say property, I'm talking about computers, desks, cash, anything like that, where the employees reside, and where the shareholders reside. There's no black and white formula for this, but generally, like I said, it's your home state. And finally, what business structure is right for me? There's really 3. The C Corp, the S Corp, and the LLC. Now, the C Corp probably won't apply to most of us in here, but let's give it a brief look at. It's a separate entity. It's not passed through. That means the corporation has its own tax bracket. It's taxed on its own. Any income that comes into the corporation, and I apologize, like I said, I had a really cool graphic here with little arrows and everything, but the income that comes in stays in that corporation. It's taxed in there. All right, and corporate tax rates are lower than they are for individuals. But who forms C corporations? Really, it's for anyone where you have more than 100 owners, where venture funding is desired, where equity financing might be sought. And we'll cover S Corp in a minute. But in general, if you're looking at the profits or the taxing structure of it, it's where profits are expected soon and they're going to be reinvested back into the business where you're not planning on taking it out. Now, you can take money out as an employee of a C Corp, you know, but you don't want to take them out as dividends because then you get what's called this double taxation that you've heard about. These are some fringe benefits that are only available to C Corps, but I don't think that really applies to a C. Or anyone want me to cover this, or should I skip this one slide? We'll skip it, I agree. I see all the writing, I'm like, ugh, I'm with you. S Corporation. Now this is a popular one. For taxation purposes, the S Corporation is a pass-through entity. What that means is the IRS looks at you as the owner. You still have the protection of assets, you know, but the IRS says, okay, you own this corporation. And then it looks at each individual's share of ownership in determining what amount will be taxed. And in an S Corp, so for example, let's say our S Corp here makes $100,000. The little guy in the tie there owns 80%, and on top, let's say you own 20%. I will be taxed on $80,000 worth of income. You will be taxed on $20,000 worth of income. And we can't change that. So, and here's why this is important. In an S Corp, the IRS assigns tax liability based on your percentage of ownership, even if you withdrew no money. So I have a friend who has an S Corp. He has a partner, another shareholder. I shouldn't use the word partner. He has another shareholder in there with him. My friend owns 80% of it, and he decides we're not going to pay any money out. My friend works in the corp, so he takes a salary, but he doesn't want to take a draw, and there's $100,000 worth of profit in there. Well, the minority shareholder who only owns 20% is stuck with a tax bill on that $20,000. And my friend's saying, nope, sorry, I'm not going to be distributing any dividends. So that minority shareholder not only is not getting the money, but now is responsible for a tax bill based on that $20,000 of income. What are the requirements of forming an S corporation? It has to be a domestic corporation filed here in the U.S. There can't be more than 100 shareholders. And for the most part, all the shareholders have to be individuals. So an LLC can't be a shareholder in an S corporation. No non-resident alien shareholders are allowed. So you have to be a permanent resident alien or a U.S. citizen only. And an S corporation can only have one class of stock. What does that mean, one class of stock? It's kind of what I just talked about. You can't say, okay, these shareholders are going to make this much out of the profits. These shareholders are going to make this much. You can't do that. Everybody has equal rights to profit and to distribution. Who prefers it? First off, the small business owners who can qualify like S corporations. And as far as the actual taxation of it, the business will make a profit soon, and owners are planning on taking out that profit. I wouldn't form an S. Oh, question.
When should the profit be withdrawn as the owners of the?
It can be withdrawn at any time, really. Are you asking like within the year or within over?
The tax year, or it says owners will withdraw most of the profit. So does that mean sometime or within the year? Or?
Rephrase your question for me, I'm sorry.
So you say owners will withdraw most of the profit. Does it matter when?
Oh, yes. At least after the first year is what I'm talking about. So if you're planning on taking out the profit in an S corp, if you're planning on taking the profit out soon, within the first year, in the second year, in the third year, on a regular basis, basically if that income is going to be passing through to the shareholders, an S corporation is a good way to go, especially as opposed to a C corp. Because if you recall, we said in a C corp, you're planning on reinvesting it. In an S corp, you're planning on taking it out. Yeah? Okay. It's not preferred where significant losses are expected during a startup phase. Now, it is true that you can pass losses through to the individual shareholders, but there are some differing tax laws on that. And it really has to do with passive versus active income, and I get kind of bored when my CPA tells me about it. So, and I'm an active participant in my business, so it doesn't really apply to me, and I think most of us are here too. Now, the LLC, this is my favorite entity. It's a pretty new type of business entity, especially in California. I think it was 1998, 97 or 98 when it first came out for us. And it affords the same type of asset protection that a corporation gets. So you have all those benefits of the asset protection, but you got some cool tax benefits with the LLC as well, too. The LLC is also a pass-through entity, all right? So income that comes in, $100,000 comes in. Let's use the same example here. Little guy in the green tie has $80,000 that he takes out, and the guy with no tie, you take $20,000 out. You're taxed on your respective share. But what's cool about the LLC is it's okay to have different member rights or different withdrawal rights. So, and you would have seen this here, but I'll try to explain it. $100,000 comes in. The guy in the green tie owns 80%, but only takes out $60,000. He's taxed on $60,000, and that's fair. The other person, all right, only owns 20%, but takes out $40,000. That's okay, completely acceptable in an LLC. And I think that's necessary in any kind of small business structure. My business is my wife, so S Corp is fine for us. But like I said before, I wouldn't form an S Corp with a buddy, I'd form an LLC. So the LLC, anyone can be an owner. Another huge benefit too. You don't have all those crazy S corporation limitations about citizenship and are you an individual. An individual, a partnership, a limited partnership, a trust, all these different entities listed here. Anyone can own, whether foreign or domestic, anyone can be an owner in an LLC. Who is it preferred by? Small business owners and investment groups who desire personal asset protection, a set operational structure, and let me take a minute on that one. I love set operational structure, because when I'm looking at something, and I refer to investment groups here, for example, hedge funds use LLCs. If I'm going to be a member in an LLC and I'm going to put some money into it, I don't want to have to review all the documents, figure out what the rights are, what happens if you die or I die, what if there's a bankruptcy. I don't want to have to do all that investigation and determination. In an LLC, or even in a corporation, there's a set operational structure. We know who's responsible for what, and it's all pretty boilerplate. Provisions can be modified, don't get me wrong, but what I'm saying is if you can't afford to or if you don't need to get lawyers involved, it's almost cookie cutter these days with corporations and LLCs. Flexible ownership, anyone can qualify. There's no limit on the number of owners. All right, and like we said earlier, the rights can be different amongst the owners. As far as whether you're expecting profits or losses, great structure where either business profits or losses are expected during startup, and owners want those profits to pass through to the individuals. We were short on video, so that is the entire presentation, but I sure would love to answer any questions anyone might have. Please.
I'm curious about the consequences for SE tax, and the difference between an S corp and an LLC for that.
For SC tax?
SE tax, self-employment tax.
Oh, okay. All right. It's that attorney lingo. Are you referring to income shifting? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting nailed with self-employment tax, and so, and I know that with, at least with the S corp, of course, personal services are kind of falling out of that, but with the S corp, people will pay themselves a reasonable salary.
Correct.
And then only pay the SE tax on that.
Right.
Can you also do that with an LLC by electing to be taxed as an S corp?
Yes, absolutely.
And at that point, you still retain the other benefits of the LLC?
Great question. What she's asking is this. She's saying, and what's your name? Carlene? Carlene. Carlene's saying, or asking, she's saying, can an LLC maintain all of this great flexibility, but be taxed as an S corporation? Is that the question? Yes, it's as simple as filing one form. It's form, do you know the form? Hey, what? 8832. It's Irish form 8832. That's my wife, Nellie. She's real helpful. So it's as simple as filing that. Now, once you file that, I don't know the exact rules on it, but there might be a 5-year thing where you can't go back. So, any other questions? Yes, sir.
Can I go from an LLC to a S corp?
Yes, great question as well, too. Any entity can file for S corp status. And I'm talking now, you're asking, I'm guessing, for the federal taxation purposes, right? Yes. And that can also happen at the state level as well, too, by filing something called articles of conversion. Different states might call it different things, but you're converting one entity into another.
One more question. I'm sorry. I formed a corporation in Nevada, but now that I'm listening to you, I want one in California. Should I dissolve it in Nevada first?
Yes, I would. Well, what do you mean by first?
Before I incorporate it in California?
I would have to ask you some more questions before I say yes, you should. But if it's just you and it's a straight up business, I mean, are we talking about a lot of money and a lot of people, a lot of employees, or small business? In most cases, let me go with that. And I'm not trying to say that to absolve liability. It's just that we're, in most cases, I would say yes, because you're going to end up paying California anyways. Yeah.
So with the S corporation, you should be paying employee, you should be paying wages and also payroll tax?
Yes.
How often is that?
How often? We use a payroll service, so they'll actually just take all the stuff out, and have you ever used a payroll service before? Or payroll service is the great way to go. We use paychecks, so we use paychecks, and they charge us a nominal fee, and they just take care of everything for us. Otherwise, it's an accounting nightmare. Sure. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I step back on this. Has to deal with incorporating in another state.
Okay.
I'm from Illinois. Illinois just passed an affiliate and excess tax legislation.
Oof. Nice.
Now, unlike New York, which their legislation words it in a way that I don't think incorporating in another state helps the people because the way they define resident in terms of their
Okay.
Unlike New York, Illinois' definitions just define the nexus in terms of a company making a contract with a person, and then the definition of person is an individual or a corporation.
Okay.
And so I think under that definition, that if I were to incorporate out of state, at that point, I'm making my contracts with corporations in another state. I think that removes me, but I'm wondering if you have any opinion on that, and in terms of being able to incorporate out of state to avoid some of that, the effects of the affiliate tax legislation that's going on in various states.
I'd have to have a clearer understanding of what the nexus law is on that.
Okay, the nexus law is, they call it the Amazon tax.
Okay.
It's the type of thing where these states want to collect their sales tax from Amazon.com. That's what it means.
Yeah, I've heard about this, so this is starting to happen now.
What they do is they pass legislation that says, by putting an affiliate link on the site, it creates a nexus that requires Amazon to collect sales tax.
Okay, I'm with you.
In Illinois. So then what Amazon does is they just drop all their affiliates in that state.
Uh-huh.
Because they don't want to deal with it. So what some affiliates have looked to do is incorporate out of state in order to get Amazon to sign them back up.
I see.
And see, in a state like New York, it doesn't work very well because New York did their legislation by defining it in terms of resident. And resident also means not just a corporation, but somebody has a house there, an office there. So if those people incorporate out of state, they still, unless they actually move, they have a problem. But Illinois defines it.
Are you in Illinois yourself?
I'm in Illinois.
Okay.
And I just wondered if you were familiar with any of that, if you have any background, maybe people are maybe looking at incorporating out of state.
I have not. I have not. That's an excellent point. That's going to be a hot topic, I can tell, especially as more states pick up on that.
It's something I've been looking into. I'm just interested in any other attorney's opinions on it.
Yeah.
I have the same problem in Colorado.
Really?
Amazon dropped all their affiliate numbers.
So what would happen if you incorporated in Delaware? Let's run through it. What happens? You incorporate in Delaware, Amazon will keep you?
Yes.
Okay? Amazon will keep you, and I'm just brainstorming through this.
Whether that's legal for Amazon really depends how the state's law is.
I kind of think that kind of becomes Amazon's problem.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's kind of, I've been looking at the sense that I need to incorporate this year.
Mhm.
And so I originally was going to incorporate Illinois, of course, until this happened. So
Mhm.
now I'm thinking, well, now do I incorporate out of state because
Now where are we
it
going to
might help
incorporate?
me.
You're absolutely right. The where to incorporate, pitch that I have here is based on small business owners that aren't facing this problem. You're absolutely right. When you're facing that problem, I would take a look at what are my consequences. If I do this, I might be liable in my home state for these other taxes, the franchise taxes, qualifying as a foreign corporation, blah, blah, blah.
Fortunately, in Illinois, that's not terrible.
Okay, good, good. So, well, that might be it then. That might be your solution, would be to incorporate in Delaware or, an Amazon acceptable state, all right? Incorporate in Delaware and do it. In that case, that would absolutely clearly be an exception to what I was saying. Absolutely.
Do you find that it's very difficult for somebody incorporating in another state in terms of getting a registered agent to bank account, things like that?
What I've seen is, well, it depends on whether you're planning on qualifying as a foreign corporation in your local state. I do know some banks that will open up a bank account for you if you have a Delaware corporation and you're not qualified in your home state, all right? But you better have a good relationship with them. They're usually smaller banks. Bank of America won't do it.
See, I thought about looking at just by states that my bank already has offices in.
I love it. Yeah, I love it. That's a great idea. Yeah, that might be the answer right there. Yes, sir.
Are you familiar with New California law where you can't impersonate someone online? The reason I ask this, you know how a lot of bloggers have different pen names?
Oh, yes. Yeah, okay.
So would a corporation protect you under that?
Well, I mean, if you're, and I'm not saying you are, but if the activity itself is breaking some kind of a law and you're engaged in that law-breaking activity with knowledge that, that it's illegal, I would see it as a piercing the corporate veil type of thing, and I wouldn't think your corporation would protect you for something like that. And I'm guessing you're talking about some kind of civil situation, and there might be some criminal things involved with that too. I don't know what law covers that. Yeah.
Because I have different blogs where I have pen names that I won't give up.
Oh, right, I get it.
I write about when I was for travel.
But you're not impersonating another person. It's a pen name. Yeah, I don't see a problem with that. Yeah? Enjoy Affiliate Summit, guys. Thanks for attending the presentation. Thank you, guys.